I've owned 13 different companies, dabbled a little in retail, been in 6 different industries.
What do you think entrepreneurs should do about AI? You know, a lot of developments are happening with AI.
Is AI the next era of what we're going to be experiencing? Don't get goo-goo eyes at AI. You know, it's like this gorgeous, big busted blonde that just drops your shirt on. You're going, making $100,000 a month. We're on pace to get to $200,000 a month. I don't want to change anything. Wrong. You got to be willing to change in order to adapt to what's coming. And the sooner you do it, the less what's coming will blindside you.
Tell us your story a little bit and how you got into business and, you know, why you're here today, what you're promoting. And I see you wrote a book and you do a lot of consulting for entrepreneurs. So I think you're going to be a great guest for the show today.
I guess my story begins with a simple detail, context. I'm 5th generation in a family-owned business, and I have never worked for a company I didn't own. Of course, in college, you work for people, but I've owned 13 different companies, dabbled a little in retail, been in 6 different industries. 3 of those companies were technology. So I bought my first computer in 1973. And I've always been fascinated with why businesses fail. I found out several decades ago that the U.S. was generating about 250,000 new businesses a month, and there were about 220,000 a month, and they were failing at about 250,000 a month. So we were losing about 30,000 small businesses every month, which is staggering, except if you realize that there's millions of businesses in the U.S., right? We're talking every single business. And I was just fascinated with that. So I spent most of my life pursuing what I would call an itch to try to understand why businesses fail. It never made sense to me because, of course, my family had been through 5 generations. We went from, the 1850s and selling hides and furs into the modern era, right? And what I wanted to know was why that happened. So I spent 23 years doing primary research on 100 different companies and 150 different executives as to what they had dealt with. This was all historical. Many of them had failed. Many of them had come close to failing. Many of them were in the process. And I put it in a book. The book is about 70% data. It's about 20% my personal life experience and about 10% my opinion and thoughts and philosophy. So it's not a self-promotion book at all. It's a book that I have out there literally for one purpose, to share the knowledge with other people. And I give it away every chance I get. So that's why I'm doing these podcasts, is because I want people to understand that there are some very simple reasons why organizations fail, and they're very, very easy to avoid. I have clients who have paid me anywhere from, I think the least anybody ever paid me was $500 when I was doing 2-hour consultations to help people identify what their objective was, what they were really trying to because when I accept a client, I say you have to have an objective. We have to have a reason to meet. We have to have a reason to work. There has to be value to you. I have to be able to deliver value to you. Otherwise, I don't want your money. And if you can't tell me what that is you want, then I don't want your money. So I've had a few people hire me just to identify what the objective was. I don't know what I want. I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm enjoying my life, but I don't really know what I want. Help me understand what I should want. And then up to as many as $250,000 a year. So I have several different ways for people to get this information. One is free, talking to people like you on podcasts. I give free 20-minute consults. And then it ranges anywhere from paying me per hour to, buying the book, buying the Kindle. You can buy the Kindle version it's $10, but usually it's on sale on Amazon for, you never know, 99 cents, $5. So you can get it pretty cheap, or you can pay $250,000 and hire me. And there's everything in between, right?
There we go.
But all I'm trying to do is get people to understand why businesses fail and what they have to do to avoid it, because it's very simple and there's only 3 reasons. It's not like there's 27 reasons, and none of them have anything to do with money.
What would those 3 reasons be?
Lack of clarity of purpose, lack of consistency of performance, lack of engagement of people. I call it the 3 Ps.
I think that's really true, especially I think the last one is the most important. I think most entrepreneurs, I think a lot of studies say that entrepreneurs are highly extroverted. I actually think that's untrue. I think a lot of entrepreneurs like to believe they're more extroverted than they are, so they don't put themselves out there as much as they should. And I've seen this myself. I mean, just being honestly, like just being real, I've had that problem, as an entrepreneur where I don't want to reach out to people, or I'm just like, oh, I don't know about that. I'm just like I'm not gonna make the cold calls. I'm not gonna send the DMs. I'm not even gonna risk it. Nobody wants that. But then at the same time, you have to flip that psychology, and I think that's part of it. You have to be willing to engage with people and really, get some kind of tribe backing what your product or service is. That's what it's really about. What would you say is the most predictable growth pain for most entrepreneurs?
Resistance to change.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely.
There's something that I call the eternal conflict. We talk about this a lot. When the first caveman needed something from his neighbor, over the hill, and had something of value, they bartered. That was when business started, right? There wasn't a financial transaction, but it was a business transaction, right? So this has been going on since man walked the earth. Those 2 guys just wish nothing would change. Hey, I got something I want that I didn't have. I got something that I don't need all of it. I can give it to him and we can trade. And the world is wonderful. If we can just keep doing this forever, great. The problem is that the world is changing every day and it's changing faster and faster. So the eternal conflict is that organizations, and this, by the way, I want to clarify something. This is very important. The research was independent of industry, revenue, size, every traditional demographic indicator. The demographic indicators were first a desire for sustainability, meaning that when the leadership team, it's time for them to retire or move on, that the organization continues to thrive. That's the first one. The second one is multiple layers of management. And entrepreneurs take a little while to get there, where you have a mid-level manager or someone that is in between the founder and the staff. The third is that they have to have no primary revenue sources from retail activities. I don't believe in B2B and B2C. I've been in the technology field for 53 years. B2B and B2C is BS. It doesn't mean anything. I don't care what anybody says. If I'm selling directly to a restaurant, knives and forks, is that B2B or is that B2C? I'm selling to the consumer. It's a ridiculous.
Right.
So no primary sources of revenue from retail activities, because I didn't research that. I didn't care about that. And the fourth was autonomous. You have to have the ability to make decisions based on the best interest of the organization, the customers, not outside investors. So all that said, people are scared to death of change because they don't want to have to adapt. And the most destructive thing to an organization is success, because what does success do? It causes change. When you're successful, when you have an idea, I call this the arc of success, you put that idea out there, and if it works, it creates growth. Growth, right, creates complexity. Complexity creates the need for controls. The need for controls creates a loss of flexibility. When you have that loss of flexibility, your world changes, and nobody likes that. So when I speak, what my special gift is creating obtuse perspectives for people to look at their business from. Because the stuff I teach is literally from the early industrial age, but people don't understand it or how to apply it today. So what I say, this almost every single time I speak publicly, it starts with this. How many of you in the audience, generally speaking, believe people like change? And of course, there's 30 people in the room, I might get one hand. If I've got 1,000 people, I'll get 10 or 20, right? And then I say, okay, how many of you, generally speaking, believe people don't like change? And of course, everybody's hand shoots up. And I say, you're all wrong. You're all completely wrong. Everybody in the world loves change. They love it. It's not the change they don't love, it's who's doing the change.
That's very
When
true.
you do the change unto others, you love it. When others put change onto you, you hate it because it isn't yours and you don't own it. So, what you have to learn how to do is how to make change yours.
I love that. And that, that reminds me a lot of what Steve Jobs said, where Steve Jobs, he had mentioned many times how, a lot of people don't know that we're all in this bubble. And at any time you can kind of poke through that bubble. And on the other side, there's this whole new universe. There's these whole new ways of thinking, conceptual ideas. And so that kind of reminds me of that, and especially with what Epictetus once said, right? You have to be able to adapt and endure. And, I mean, whether people, I know controversial man today, but Donald Trump has always said the same thing. You have to be able to respond to the unpredictable twists of fate, even though, maybe he's not so good at it, whatever, depending on what people think. But ultimately, I agree with that mindset completely. And I think that's a huge part of it, being able to really adapt to the change, being able to adjust and adapt to what's coming tomorrow, the future. And a lot of business owners really aren't thinking about those things.
And it's more than an adaptation, it's embrace. It's not just about adapting. You have to embrace it. You have to make it yours. Because, so I learned this in the 2010s. 85% of all corporate change initiatives fail to achieve their primary objective. Now that's pretty shocking. 85%. They achieve change, they achieve some success, but the primary objective of the change project, the change initiative, is never met 85% of the time. So there's a company that did research on this called ProSci, and they figured out why, and they put a process together for making change work. And one of the keys is that it starts with awareness. The first level is you have to be conscious and accept the fact that something's going to change. If you can't do that first, you're doomed. You have to just recognize there's an inevitability here. The second thing is, what is it that you desire that you don't have? And how will the change that you can't avoid help you get it? So what it does is it starts you it shifts your focus from crap, we're not going to be able to do that anymore, to, oh my God, we get to do this and we've been wanting to do it forever and we haven't been able to. How do we take that and make the most out of it? Yeah, we're going to lose some stuff that we like, but look at what we get. We've been waiting so long to be able to get this stuff. So you have to focus on the third, that are vocal supporters of the new stuff, and the silent resistors. We all know this. Will no longer follow the vocal resistors, and the vocal resistors will go away.
Very interesting.
It's about owning it. It's about embracing it. It's about making change yours.
I think that's very true. When it comes to culture versus process versus leadership, these are big issues that a lot of entrepreneurs face today as well. When companies are declining, leaders are often becoming, more culture based and whatnot, problem oriented, like problem solution oriented. What is that real thing that most entrepreneurs are missing?
Well, I think I understand your question and I know what I want to answer. And if I don't hit the nail on the head, you tell me. But one of the realities of, there's a premise. If you're not growing, you're dying. If you don't believe that, you don't want to listen to me, because there is no such thing as stasis. Your customers are dying, your employees are dying, your business is dying. Everything you sell is becoming obsolete. It just is doing it in a slow process. So if you're not growing in some way, whether it's geographically, product-wise, employees, revenue, I don't care what it is. If you're not growing, you're dying. You have to accept that. Once you accept that, you can begin to understand things like diversity is the catalyst for growth. When you bring diversity into an environment, what you bring are different perspectives and different opinions that allow you to think about things that you know from a different angle. That gives you a richness of understanding that allows you to embrace a market like you've never been able to embrace before. The problem is, how do you get different people from different cultures with different sets of right and wrong and different ethics and different beliefs on the same page? It's part of clarity of purpose, and it has to do with the type of culture you want to engineer. So, what you do is you identify a common set of values. You create stories that describe the way the value is put into practice, not just what it means, but how it actually works on a daily basis. And then you employ what I call a should culture. I have other words for it, but it's a culture that basically says, I don't want to manage you. You know the right thing to do as long as you conform to these values. And when you hire people, you say, this is the value, this is the way this organization runs. If you don't like it, you're going to be miserable here. I'm just being honest with you, right? If you don't want to be part of what we do here, this is our purpose. This is what we love. This is how we work. This is our culture. If you don't like it, you're going to go away. You'll leave on your own. We won't need to fire you. You'll be miserable. So what we do is we say, you conform to those values and you know what our purpose is. You do what you know is right. I don't want you to have to worry about a rule. I don't want you out there in the field or working with a customer and saying, what the hell is that rule? Am I on the right side of the line or the wrong side of the line? And if I need to step over the line to take care of the customer, how far can I get over the line without getting fired or without getting in trouble? And do I want to ask permission or do I want to ask for forgiveness? And, and that dialogue just consumes so much mental energy of everybody in the organization. So the key here is to minimize the rules.
I think that's great what you said. It actually, to expand on that, it made me think about a little bit about Alex Hormozy. And, he's big on frameworks and he's a big systems thinker himself. And one of the big things he says is as a manager, as a business owner, as a CEO, he'll have guys that will be coming to him about these problems. Like, hey, we got a leak in the roof. What do I do? And Alex would be like, well, you tell me. You handle it. It's not my job to handle it. And it's like it really is about those frameworks. It's those different kinds of leadership. And so I think that's very true. Absolutely.
Yeah. The guy who founded Staples is someone that I happen to know, and I've met him several times, and we've spoken several times. And he's a little crude. He had a lot of trouble in school, didn't do a good job getting a high school diploma. But he's a brilliant guy, and he had something he called a no turd policy. He says, my door is never closed. It's always open. You can come in here and talk to me anytime you want. The only rule I have is you can't bring your turds in here and put them on my desk and expect me to take care of them. And that's literally the way he spoke in public all the time. And his whole thing was that you have a problem. You have the resources to fix it. We've given them to you. Fix it. If you need help, tell me. If you want permission, don't come to me. You figure it out. This is what I mean by giving people different perspectives from which to view things. So that whole business about process, when you shift the focus from what's the right thing to do to, listen, I know the right thing to do. I don't need to be told, and I don't need a rule. I'm trying to do the same thing everybody else in this company is doing. We're all trying to achieve the same goal, the same purpose. We're focused on the same thing. I'm not going to micromanage you. You do what you believe is the right thing to do. And when you have that, then people have the ability to build their own best practices, and the system's self-refined. Because people say, hey, Joe is doing this. Look what he's doing. Let's do that. We have the freedom to do it the way he's doing. And maybe it doesn't quite work in our silo, but let's take what he's doing and bring it over here, adapt it, and do it his way in our space. So that whole business about systems, it doesn't go away, but it shifts from constraints and shackles to a platform that allows you to make a living best practice environment that is constantly changing. So think about this. What I just described to you was how you bring constant change into the organization in a way that people love. because it's the change they want to do themselves. We can change this process and make it better. Ooh, that sounds like fun, right?
Absolutely.
So this is what I mean when I talk about changing your perspective on change and embracing it. It's another way to bring that into the organization.
I love that. And so let's just say you're a company, mate. You finally hit 100K a month. You start actually succeeding. You start really getting some, you're doing pretty well. So how do you handle that? So let's say, for example, like what is that success trap? And I think that's an important thing to cover as well. So when you start really winning in business, when you start winning and you really start compounding on what you're doing, what do you think is the best way to handle that and to follow up all of those things?
Well, there's a reason that entrepreneurs don't make good managers of larger organizations, and it's because they struggle to live within rules they set. So most entrepreneurs have the mindset of, I'll tell you what the rules are, and I'll tell you when the rules change. And if I want to change the rule, I'll change the rule. When you start to grow and you start to have more people dependent upon the organization, the flexibility, the freedom to make those changes to rules tends to diminish, and it diminishes at a rapidly increasing rate as you continue to grow. And what that means is that the entrepreneur can no longer change the rules, so they feel shackled. And most entrepreneurs don't want that feeling of constraint. But I'm going to go back to my comment about the arc of success. You go through that cycle, and remember, you create complexity, and the complexity requires the need for controls, and the controls create a loss of flexibility, right? Because there have to be some controls. It's different than systems and structure. There have to be some controls just to manage the complexity as you continue to get bigger. So there's only one way to handle it. Either people adapt or they leave. Now, I'll tell you a little story, and it's in my book, and it's a true story. There's a company that had about 550 employees, serving roughly 10,000 customers and about 110 million in gross revenues across three entities, one corporate entity, three entities. And the 50 people in admin in the parent company, they were buying all their own office supplies. And one day the ops manager said, we can't do this anymore because they ran out of like paper, like copy paper, and had tons and tons of writing utensils, and they were screwed. I mean, they were out of whack, right? So they said, we're going to put a rule in, we're going to centralize all the ordering of office supplies. And that triggered a revolt, and people got really pissed off and started to try to force change. And they brought me in, and I spoke to them, and I said, I explained all of this to them, and I took them through it at a very granular level. There were about 30 active W-2 employees that were on this rampage. And I said, you guys don't understand that you did this to yourself. You created so much success that in order to manage it, certain controls had to be put in place, and now you don't like that. So what you need to do is quit and go find another job, another company doing the same kind of work, only smaller, where you can bring your expertise to them and enjoy the same fun and experience you've had up to this point. Otherwise, you're going to have to change and stop bitching about the good the bad that came from the good you created. Because this is your fault. This isn't management's fault. You did this to yourself. And everybody was like, holy shit.
Yeah,
we did.
I can see how that could happen.
And it was over in like 2 hours. I walked away, and 2 hours later, I got a phone call from the manager, and she said, the three leaders, the ringleaders, came in and apologized and said, we're not going to have any more trouble.
Well, I think you need to do that too, though. There does need to be a level of control. Like that's a part of scaling a business is, you're really over time, the more you grow, at least from my experience, we're always trimming things down. We're trimming the fat, so to speak, and we're always trying to save money. I mean, you're trying to not spend money. It's in a weird way in business, you're almost trying to not spend money more than you are trying to make money. It's kind of the art of like not getting shiny object syndrome, and then also not hiring too many people and over delegating. And that, again, I've done it many times. And, again, talking to people like you, I've kind of learned a lot of this, and I'm glad I have, but it's something important for a lot of entrepreneurs to take note of. So if you had a so if you had to say anything about leadership and what is the fastest diagnostic you would run to tell people they're heading towards growth or the suicide route of business owners, which is making a lot of the mistakes we've been discussing here?
So there are, what I had to do was figure out, I'm trying to figure out how to say this concisely. What my goal was to figure out how to create an environment where I could measure non financial leading indicators that would tell me the capacity for sustainable growth. Okay. So I'm looking for a way to measure with objectively measurable indicators that are leading, but not financial, because there's no such thing as a financial leading indicator. Every financial indicator is lacking. There's leading economic indicators, but that's different. So what I did was I found 8 of these indicators, and they're broken into 3 groups because you mature as an organization. So there's 3 levels of maturity. And then I made an assessment tool where you can fill this out, and it ranks each of those 8 areas from weakest to strongest. So it tells you where your weakest is. And universally, almost always, every single entrepreneur that's on that leading edge of success and struggling have failed to create clarity of purpose. And every time I talk to them, they always say, "Are you crazy? Of course, we know what our purpose is. We know what we're doing. We're building the best software program for veterinary hospitals it's ever been. We're putting the best software in place for electronics repair, for phone repair shops, or whatever it is." I say, fine. You find several people throughout your organization. Usually I'm dealing with organizations of more, more than a handful, 20 or 30. Usually I'm dealing with people in the 50s or hundreds. Find 10 people, I don't care how many are, find a group of people across your organization and go and ask them one simple question. What is our purpose? What do you think our purpose is? And if you ask 6 people, they'll give you 6 different answers. If you ask 10 people, they'll give you 10 different answers. And if you ask that question and you don't get the same answer from everybody, you're in trouble. That's the beginning. That's the beginning of the fuse that gets lit on the path to self-destruction. Lack of clarity of purpose.
I think that's very true. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there has to be that overall vision that everybody, coincides with and everybody's really following. And so for the audience takeaway, for the business owner listening right now, what are the top 3 moves they should make to avoid organizational suicide and stay aligned with the arc of success?
So do you want me to keep this in the entrepreneurial early stage phase, or do you want a bigger picture?
Go with it. Tactical advice, anything, the bigger picture. Sure.
So I'm going to give you the 3 largest problems with success. And I'm going to tell you that the 3 stages of maturity are youth, adolescence, and adulthood. Youth is narrow and shallow experience, not expertise, not talent, not knowledge, but experience. Been there, done that. That's youth, narrow, shallow. Adolescence is narrow, deep. Not broad, but we've done a lot of it. Adulthood is broad and deep. Number 1 failure point in youth is people treating symptoms, not problems. When you start having a problem and you try to fix it and it doesn't go away, you're playing whack-a-mole. You're not fixing the problem, you're fixing the symptom. Figure out what's causing the symptom. And to do that, you often have to say why 3 times. We have this problem. Why? It's because of this. Well, why is that happening? Well, it's because of this. Well, why is that happening? Now, maybe you've finally gotten to the real problem after 3 whys. That's the first one. That's youth. In adolescence, the problem is people say, we got successful because we did this. We need to keep doing it. Wrong. Just because it was successful and got you here doesn't mean you need to keep doing it. Doesn't mean you need to get rid of it, but it means you need to be willing to get rid of it if it isn't going to serve your needs. And there's this rigidity that happens when you get into adolescence, where people say, no, we made it, we're here, we're making 100,000 a month, we're on pace to get to 200,000 a month, I don't want to change anything. Wrong. You got to be willing to change in order to adapt to what's coming, and the sooner you do it, the less what's coming will blindside you. And of course, the last thing, the number one thing in adulthood is people, it's what leads to bureaucracy. People say, again, I don't want to change just to get something good. Just because I can make something better doesn't mean it's better for us. We've got a good system that works. I call it emotional resistance to beneficial change, right? And this is where this whole business about embracing change really comes to life, because you've got to be able to do it by remembering your purpose, maintaining your consistency of performance, because if you don't have that, you have no trust. You can't make commitments, right?
Definitely.
And that's when you start getting people to feel like they're an actual part of the company. Every entrepreneur I've ever known has said, I wish I could just have 50 of me, or 5 of me, or 2 of me. That is such a stupid thing to say, because you want smarter people than you. You don't want 2 of you or 3 of you. You want 1 of you, and everybody else you want to be smarter than you. Don't be afraid to be wrong. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to not have the answer. Be open to it. So again, right?
Yeah, I think that's very brilliant. Absolutely true. What do you think entrepreneurs should do about AI? A lot of developments are happening with AI. I think obviously it's going to take a lot of jobs away. Going to be super disruptive to the future. What do you see? What do you think entrepreneurs should do to adapt to that change? That's a big change that people are going to have to adapt to, for sure.
I think the bigger problem is social media. I've had this conversation a lot since mid 2025, and I'm still having it today. This question about, is AI the next era of what we're going to be experiencing? And I don't believe it is. I think social media was that turning point, because social media changed the dynamic from push to pull. It changed us from needing to push our message out to people we wanted to get to being attractive and pulling in people who wanted our message and saying, if you like this, come to me. AI doesn't change that. What AI does is it changes the power dynamic. It changes the need for other tools, and it changes the need for the depth of experience. For example, if you need to communicate with somebody in a different language, AI lets you do that. If you need to communicate with somebody one of my clients opened, and we're all in California. They opened a branch in Texas, and that thing was losing $1 million a year. Couldn't figure out why. Culture was different. AI can tell you that the culture is different, and it can tell you how to change the culture that is part of your system so that it doesn't destroy the organizational culture nationwide, but adapts to the regional culture. So what I say to people about AI is, understand your business enough to know where the weaknesses are, and look for ways that you can leverage AI to gather data to help you adjust and modify or change the things in your business that are easily changeable due to cultural and other environmental shifts that you're not prepared for. It'll cut down that learning time. It'll cut down that change. But don't expect it to be creative, and don't expect it to do things that it's not really meant to do. And it's always wrong. It's always wrong. I get so sick of this. People say, well, you can trust the bank. No, you can't. I've never done business with a bank that hasn't made a mistake. Never, not once. Every single property I've ever bought, I've read every piece of closure paper. I've never bought a piece of real estate, retail, residential or commercial, where there wasn't an error in the closing documents. Not once. I'm 68 years old. I bought a lot of property. Never found one that was right. You cannot trust AI. You always have to question it. And it'll tell you, I make mistakes if you ask it. So I say to people, don't get goo-goo eyes at AI. It's like this gorgeous, big, busted blonde that just drops her shirt. You're going, oh, no. Pay attention to the ball. It's a tool. It's a tool. Don't let it take you over. Use it.
I think that's excellent advice. It couldn't be better because again, as a real estate agent, as I build a lot of AI agents, I do a lot of the same stuff for our clients. We build AI automation systems, lead generation, things like that. And it's definitely identifiable. You definitely have to be able to adapt, and there's so many great things you can do with it. Like you said, if you're able to adapt, then you can actually, you can ease up your life. You can actually make more money, and things like that. But you have to be creative, and whatever you're creating has to be, it has to be controlled by you. You, the human, have to make sure that you're not becoming the AI. You gotta have some kind of control over that, and that's kind of one of the bigger things I try to tell a lot of our clients. Like, hey, as you're building this stuff, be careful. But at the same time, know what it can do for you. It can do a lot for you if you use it correctly. So, with that being said, we're kind of running out of time. Where can we find your book, and where can we find any of your other work?
Pretty much all the public places, Apple Store, the Play Store, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. Just remember, businesses don't fail. If you could remember that, it's easy to find. And the website is mandelberg.biz, B-I-Z. But I'm all over the internet, and if you can remember how to spell my name and just do a Google search for me, you'll find something, and you can get to me. People can schedule that, like I said, that free 20-minute consult on the website. Send me an email. I'm really pretty easy to find, and I've got support staff that when we get valid emails and valid requests, we respond to every single one of them.
Absolutely. And thank you a lot for coming on the show, Larry. I mean, you're a great guest. A lot of your insights. I'd love to do this longer for sure. We'll have you on again. Got a lot of insights.
I love it.
Got a lot of insights that I think people and a lot of entrepreneurs need to hear. So we'll definitely clip this up. I will contact you with the logistics and the distribution and all that process. And again, thank you for coming on the show. Everybody, make sure you follow Larry and make sure you buy his book, Businesses Don't Fail. They Commit Suicide. Business is going to be easier if you follow people like Larry, ladies and gentlemen. So with that being said, again, I got nothing else. Anything else you want to
add? No, I love this, and I love giving the information away. I'm not looking for customers. I'm not looking for business. I'm semi-retired, so I don't want anybody to think I'm out there peddling anything. If you need something and it's a legitimate need and I can sell it to you, maybe I will if I like you, but I don't want people to think this is a money grab, because it's not. I just want people to have the knowledge, the information to be able to be successful. That's what I want to leave you with.
Thanks so much, Larry. You were a great guest. I'll let you know what happens next. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good luck to you, Brandon. Good luck to all your listeners.
Yes, you as well, and your listeners too.
All right, bye-bye.